It's time to reboot your credit card with Apple Card. Apple Card gives you unlimited cash back every day on every purchase. It's real cash you can spend right away. No need to wait and wait for rewards. Apply now in the Wallet app on iPhone to see your credit limit offer with no impact to your credit score. Subject to credit approval. Daily cash is available via an Apple Cash card or as a statement credit. See Apple Card customer agreement for terms and conditions. Apple Cash card is issued by Green Dot Bank, member FDIC. Accepting an Apple Card after your application is approved will result in a hard inquiry, which may impact your credit score.
You know, enough 70 and 80-hour weeks of SNL where it was just like, this is going to kill us. This isn't going to be fun anymore. And we're going to wind up turning it away. You know, we got in this industry to be performers and builders.
Yeah.
But now so much what we do is administrative. We didn't want to lose that joy.
Welcome back to Working. I'm your host, June Thomas.
And I'm your other host, Karen Hahn.
Karen, it is so great to see you. How's 2023 treating you so far?
Pretty good. I can't complain. We've had a lot of rain in Los Angeles the past week, and also are apparently supposed to keep having rain for the next week, which I really like. Although I've seen a lot of people sort of saying, I didn't move here for this. Please make it stop. But we need the rain. We need the rain.
Indeed, yeah. I hope for much more rain without messing up the driving, which I know is key in that part of the world. So tell me, whose voices did we hear at the top of the show?
So the folks that I talked to this week were Marc Petrosino and Michael Latini, the co-founders of Monkey Boys Productions, a company that has become, per their website, the leading studio for creating puppets, props, creatures, costumes, practical effects, and entertainment for film, television, and stage.
Wait. Props? Puppets? I need you to tell me a little bit more.
Of course. So I think there's a non-zero chance that listeners will have seen some of their work already, as they do a lot of work creating weird and wonderful things for Saturday Night Live, as well as having made props for the Funny Girl and Music Man revivals on Broadway, Little Shop of Horrors off-Broadway, and for the show Mystery Science Theater 3000, just to name a few of the projects that they've worked on. So they're pretty prolific.
Wow. So they're the go-to puppet people. Okay.
Yeah.
And I believe that you asked Marc and Michael some questions that are intended exclusively for the ears of Slate Plus members. What will they hear?
So for the Slate Plus segment, I asked them about the weirdest or strangest puppet/prop that they've worked on, which I think leads to a very interesting answer.
Wow. That is going to be amazing. And if you're a Slate Plus member, you'll get to hear that at the end of the show. If for some unfathomable reason you are not yet a member of Slate Plus, then why not sign up today? You will get extra segments on shows like Culture Gabfest and The Waves. A few shows like One Year and Big Mood, Little Mood produce entire episodes, bonus episodes, just for Slate Plus members. And you'll never hit a paywall on the Slate site. Also, you'll be supporting our work here at Working. To learn more, go to slate.com/working plus. All right, now let's listen in on Karen's conversation with Marc Petrosino and Michael Latini.
Hello to Michael and Marc. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Karen. Thanks for having us.
I'm so excited to talk to you guys because you have made so many wonderful, weird props for TV, for film, for theatrical productions. And I wanted to start by talking about, I think, kind of the weirdest thing that you've done recently, which is the singing meatballs puppets from Oscar Isaac's last episode of Saturday Night Live. What instructions did you get for making those meatball heads/bodies, and was there much back and forth in putting those together?
So that was for Saturday Night Live, as you said, and we tend to get a call Wednesday night of the week of the show to find out what's happening. So it's 10, 11 p.m. and I get a text from the producer for the film unit, which is the pre-tape. So they shoot on Friday, all day Friday, and then edit. It's insane. It's even crazier than trying to get ready for the live show, which meant we had to make stuff Thursday. And I get this text from the producer saying, I need 4 meatball skin tag puppets. And I texted her back and said, is this a autocorrect fail? What are you saying here? Because this doesn't make sense. But then I got on the phone with her and she explained that Sarah Sherman and Dan Bulla, who wrote the sketch, had come up with this idea for these, obviously, if you've seen the sketch, these weird, skin tags that look like meatballs that have little faces and arms and legs and sing a fun little song. And we were like, this is weird. I don't know if this is going to make it. And then we heard the song and we were like, oh, this is catchy. This is actually going to make it. So.
There, now you know. There's a little meatball guy on the side of my neck, and every time I take the green ribbon off and expose him to light, he wakes up and sings his little songs. Does that clear things up for you?
Totally.
So what were they actually made out of?
A combination of foam and latex. We have an amazing team of 6 fabricators who are our main group who do a lot of the fabrication for SNL puppets and props. And for that, I think they made a pattern, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think we used a previous ball pattern that we had, and it was basically just a shell with a face hole cut out of it. That was the starting foam pattern, and then made little arms, and then it all got glued together basically with the silicone and latex and everything.
It's remarkable to hear that you guys have to do this basically in 2 or 3 days, turn these really kind of impressive looking things around so quickly. What are the considerations for when your timescale is so short for working on something like that?
It takes a lot of preparation, not only in our own skill sets, in learning and honing our craft, but also in trying to guess what type of materials we'll need here, trying to guess what type of timeline we can actually work with here. And then once we get the call, it's this fun game of problem solving where Mike and I, and often Dylan, our head of that team, will put our heads together and go, all right, we can probably buy this to use as a base for this, and we can buy some of this material to slap on top of it, and we can paint it this way, or we can print material which will skin it, or we can make a sticker, or whatever the case may be, to try and do it all as high of quality and as quickly as possible. And it's all compounded nowadays that everybody has 4K and I guess 8K TVs, that you can't get away with a theater quality finish on it. You have to really get clean, which that in and of itself would take normally a week to do. So you have to try and compress that timeline. So our team works long hours Thursdays and Fridays, and then we truck it up Saturday and hope that it makes it to air.
And I want to ask about one other thing that you've done for Saturday Night Live, which I think a lot of people will recognize if they're viewers of the show. You guys also created the White House podiums that Melissa McCarthy zoomed around on for her impression of Sean Spicer. Can you tell me about putting those together? Mike, how about you start?
That was a crazy earlier thing for us. I think the first thing we ever did for SNL was for a sketch that got cut in season 40, and I believe the Spicer podiums were season 42. Yeah, so basically the head of props reached out to us and said, hey, they're thinking about putting Melissa as Sean Spicer on a Segway. And we were like, maybe something more sturdy than a Segway. So we started brainstorming and figuring out that maybe one of those Jazzies or something like that, something with more wheels would be a little more safe to put in the studio and make sure that Melissa McCarthy doesn't faceplant. I mean, it was just one of those crazy things where we found a used Jazzy and stripped it down and then built it back up, basically moved the controller and tried to match the existing podium as much as possible. And then, of course, one of the most fun parts of it was just being able to bring it up there and get Melissa McCarthy to learn how to use it. And it was a very, very quick learning curve, because pretty much we said okay, this controls your speed. You might not want to go too fast depending on how comfortable you are. And then, of course, she was like, oh, okay. She turns it all the way up and is zooming all over the place. It was great.
Just to tag on a little of what went into it, like Mike said, you stripped it down, and then we had our welders build a new steel frame on the inside. Mike did some carpentry work to build a box frame around that, and then we put foam, insulation foam that you'd buy at the hardware store, and then that got covered with
contact paper
you'd put on a shelf. We found the right wood grain because there wasn't going to be enough time to paint it and make that visual effect. It's just that type of cobbling together like you had asked about before.
I guess sort of related to that question, like obviously some of these are pretty involved things that you guys have to make. Like since you've been working with Saturday Night Live for several years now, do you have sort of a, I guess, guide sheet where you're like, we can do this in that time, or like this will be much harder? Like, do you have kind of rules that you guys play by with them?
Because it's unique every week, you never know what they're going to ask for. We kind of have in our heads, like, this is something we know we can do, or this is something we can't. Mm-hmm. They've come to us with stuff before that we're like, we don't have that skill set yet, or we don't have experience with it, and this isn't the time or place to test that out. Because if we fail, then everybody's up a creek. Thankfully, we have a real confidence and knowledge of what we do and don't know, and we don't try and overachieve too much.
We feel lucky here that we can make almost anything. It's just whether or not we can make that thing they're asking for in the time allotted. And sometimes it even just falls down to like, you're asking for this on Friday night and the stores are closed, or we can't get those those very specific mold making materials we could have gotten on Friday morning, but the place is closed now. That forces our hands a lot. But then that also provides us with opportunities to do some more creative problem solving. Usually we're not saying, no, we can't do it. We're saying we can't do it like that, but we could do it like this maybe. And the writers and producers all are so used to that because of the time crunch on the show that they're like, okay, that'll work, or maybe not this and that. And it's a very collaborative back and forth with them, which is great.
So I'm very curious about what you said about having your first SNL skit kind of get cut from the air, as it were, where I feel like a lot of people who have freelanced in any way have sort of gone through this, where you get an assignment and then you get to the end and then it's like, oh, actually, we don't really need that anymore, or something to that effect. I'm curious what the job was, why it ended up getting cut, and how you kind of overcame that, because I think it's hard not to take it personally in the moment.
Yeah, so our first sketch that got cut was they wrote a Little Shop of Horrors sketch for season 40.
Oh, wow.
And it was Bobby Moynihan was the lead writer on it, and the host was Scarlett Johansson. She was playing Audrey. So they rented our Little Shop puppets, so we brought our Little Shop puppets up, and we were both there to puppeteer them as well. And we did this sketch. It was funny. It was very complicated, and we were hearing from stagehands that like, oh, this is really complicated. Sometimes the really complicated sketches get cut. And we were just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it did get cut in between the dress rehearsal and the live show.
Yeah. So literally at the 11th hour.
And we were bummed, but honestly, in my opinion, it was a great way to start working with SNL, because then everything that makes it to air now is a little extra special, because we've been doing it long enough now that it doesn't faze us at all when stuff gets cut, because they still pay for it too.
Yeah. You learn not to be precious.
And I also wanted to ask, you guys have worked on several New York theater productions on Broadway, notably most recently the Funny Girl and Music Man revivals. Those are obviously kind of bigger scale projects, and I imagine you have a lot more lead time for something like that. Is there a usual timetable for when you're brought onto a show to work on something for them?
We keep learning that you would think there's more time, but often there's not.
Oh, really?
A lot of productions.
It's more than SNL.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, SNL is the only place we allow to come to us with really short time crunches.
Yeah.
But we've had productions come to us to build large puppets where they would normally take us 6 months to build, and they've come to us with 2 months. And we're like, we just can't do that. We can't go faster than the speed of light. So again, we do creative problem solving and find alternate ways to make things happen. Each production comes to us with a different timeline. Some places like, oh, we have 6 months. And we're like, oh, thank you. Great. We'll schedule you in and this will be nice. And we have back and forth.
Yeah, for Funny Girl, we only did some simple props. We did some mirrors that are used in a dance number. And there are lots of 3D printed parts and custom things assembled and painted and all that kind of thing. Music Man seemed to give us a good amount of time to do what we did, which was basically they bought an old 2-person horse and we kind of stripped it down and made it look Broadway ready. Yeah. And then we also made the suitcases that are used throughout the show. I think that was probably like a month or two turnaround time, which was pretty much enough time to figure it out. But then puppet-wise, we also recently worked with the off-Broadway production of Little Shop of Horrors, which Mark and I have individually performed the show over 1,000 times. And we've,
really?
Yeah, and we've both built the puppets multiple times now. So that's the ones that came to us wanting new puppets for the show, but only having 2 months. So we luckily worked with their costume designer, who had the idea of saying, like, you guys have a rental set of puppets, which we do. And they're like, is there a way for you to like theme the rental set so that it matches the new design. And that's basically what we did. So we were able to truncate the build.
We'll be back with more from Karen's conversation with Marc Petrosino and Michael Latini after this. It's time to reboot your credit card with Apple Card. Apple Card gives you unlimited cash back every day on every purchase. It's real cash you can spend right away. No need to wait for rewards. Apply now in the Wallet app on iPhone to see your credit limit offer with no impact to your credit score. Subject to credit approval. Daily cash is available via an Apple Cash card or as a statement credit. See Apple Card customer agreement for terms and conditions. Apple Cash card is issued by Green Dot Bank, member FDIC. Accepting an Apple Card after your application is approved will result in a hard inquiry, which may impact your credit score.
This episode of Working is brought to you by Progressive. What's one thing you'd purchase with a little extra savings? A weighted blanket? Smart speaker? That new self-care trend you keep hearing about? Well, Progressive wants to make sure you're getting what you want by helping you save money on car insurance. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. Discounts like having multiple vehicles on your policy. Progressive offers outstanding coverage and award-winning claim service. Day or night, they have customer support 24/7, 365 days a year. When you need them most, they're at their best. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com and see why 4 out of 5 new auto customers recommend Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations.
Listeners, I hope you've been enjoying Working Overtime, the bi-weekly bonus version of Working focused on listener questions, which you can catch every other Thursday. We love to give advice. We like hardly anything better, and we want to answer your questions, respond to your concerns, and generally share ideas on that show. So, is there a creative problem you're having or a creative practice that's working really well for you right now? Well, drop us a line at working@slate.com or call us and leave a voicemail at 304-933-WORK. You can also record a voice message and send it to our email address. And if you're enjoying this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Working wherever you get your podcasts. All right, now back to Karen's conversation with Marc Petrosino and Michael Latini.
I want to come back to Little Shop of Horrors, but I wanted to ask one more Amusing Man question first, because when I saw the show, I saw the quote-unquote dance-safe suitcases that you guys made, which is it was really wild, like watching them fling them around like that. So what are the parameters for something being dance-safe?
It was basically as light as possible. We do a lot of carbon fiber work here to keep things durable and lightweight, whether it was going to be carbon fiber or foam. And ultimately for that, we ended up using a foam called Zote foam, which is just very rigid. It's almost like rigid like plywood almost, but it's as light as foam. And it's durable enough that if it falls on the ground, the foam doesn't break, kind of like an insulation or a styrofoam. So they're mostly made out of that and then wrapped in the pleather and hand painted and everything like that. The same way we detailed the open suitcase that was made out of wood and the more durable and heavyweight one and stuff like that.
I was going to say that the heavyweight one, Mike came up with an ingenious kind of hammock inside of it so that the weight, there's the suitcase that the anvil salesman has to drop.
Yeah.
And it has to thud and has to sit and not move. And that energy has to go somewhere. So if you just made a heavy suitcase, it would bump and bounce and go all over the place. And Mike came up with this, like I said, a hammock basically inside for the weight. So it would hit and the hammock would bounce a little inside, but the suitcase would just thump and sit heavy like there's supposed to be an anvil inside. It was brilliant.
That's fascinating. And such a fascinating secret, which I guess does sort of lead me into the Little Shop question, which is the Audrey 2 puppet is obviously so iconic for that show. But I think probably not a lot of us know what goes into making an Audrey 2. Can you guys tell us, at least for your company, what goes into making an Audrey 2 that works and is convincing?
Well, I'll let Mike tell you some of the details of the mechanics of it, but just backstory. The first thing you do is you get to know Martin Robinson, who designed and built the original puppets off-Broadway back in the 80s.
Yeah.
He's a friend and a mentor and a very generous person who lent us his designs for, we had made a rental set that looked like the Broadway set from 2003. So we kind of cut our teeth on that, learning how to build those puppets. So when they came to us, like Mike said, with the off-Broadway production, we were able to move more quickly and more expertly. So having that knowledge and that experience, and not to mention also, like Mike said, with the performances, Marty cast us in that show as well. So it gave us a more intimate knowledge of the show.
Yeah. Mechanically, they've been pretty much the same since they were done in the early 80s, minus the largest puppet that has gone through the most changes mechanically. But starting with, there are 4 sizes. We call them Pod 1, 2, 3, and 4, even though they're all Audrey 2. The numbers get a little confusing when talking about the pods. But Pod 1 is just a simple hand puppet. You know, the puppeteer sits usually inside a little cabinet, and the puppet is placed on the cabinet. And then as smoothly and gently as possible, the puppeteer slides their hand into the puppet and does its job. Pod number 2 is old technique where you have a fake arm holding up the puppet, and the puppeteer's or Seymour's arm is inside the puppet. So that, again, is just a more traditional hand puppet. We usually go up and work with the Seymours to train them about puppetry. Some have more experience, some have no experience, to give them lots of training about, even though this thing only weighs 5 pounds, you have to pretend that it weighs 40 pounds. And lots of that puppetry training is often embedded into the show, which is great. Pod number 3, which is my favorite, is more of a full body puppet. So it's a very large shell, kind of like 2 halves of an avocado with the bottom cut off. And you sit on a chair inside this very large flower pot, and your legs are covered to make them look like vines of the puppet. But you're inside the body so that there's a bar on the top jaw and a bar on the bottom jaw, and you're basically inside of that, puppeteering it, both like moving your abdomen and your core all over the place. So it's almost like the neck of the puppet becomes your waist and your back, and the mouth of the puppet is your right arm and left arm. Puppeteering it like that. Sometimes there's a tongue sleeve that you slide your arm into to get some fun effect. Sometimes there's some mechanisms in it. The one that we had on Broadway in 2003 had a nice twist mechanism where you turn the handles and it made the lips pucker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they get very complicated and adding more parts and things. But then the largest puppet, the number 4, the one that's like the size of a car, when Marty designed it back in the off-Broadway production in the 80s, it was all these strap systems and bungees that you're supporting it on your thighs and lifting it in all these weird ways. And
it weighed about 100 pounds.
Yeah. We knew from doing the Broadway production in 2003 that this thing could be bigger and could be better. And we basically took this very large and heavy puppet and simplified the mechanism so that it is supporting itself. Basically, it's a very large carbon fiber shell that sits on a pole now, and the post that holds up everything has a mechanical gimbal in it that allows the head to pivot and rotate. But so that the performer doesn't have to hold it, it's on its own platform. So the platform rolls around, it goes to high schools and theaters and colleges for our rental set. And it's pretty much the same way that is on off-Broadway, so that they can push the platform around and move it and swap it out in between the first act and the second act and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it seems particularly difficult in a way, too, because you're having to cooperate with other people to make this one performance happen. What kind of, I guess, training or talk with the other puppeteers did you have to do in order to get in sync, I guess?
even though you're usually puppeteering the puppet by yourself, you're working in tandem with the voice of the puppet. So that's a relationship that's very much like a give and take. Like you're usually wearing an in-ear monitor so that you can hear their breath, so that you can prep as the puppeteer for them to say the lines. Even though you know the song and you know everything, Mark and I were lucky enough on the national tour to get to a point with the voice of the puppet, Michael James Leslie, to be able to do live interviews. So he would kind of say similar things in our interviews, but he would give us that breath, and we knew his voice enough that we could match the rhythms. It was really an awesome partnership.
So both of you are obviously very accomplished puppeteers. Like, when did the urge to create these as well, like, kind of come tandem with that? Or was there, like, you started with one thing and then moved into fabrication, or were you kind of always interested in both?
I personally got into the arts realizing that it could be an avenue for all the things I liked. Mm-hmm. I mean, we both have similar but different backgrounds. I grew up doing theater in grade school and high school, not only performing on stage, but also doing like stage crew work and tech work. And then I went to art school. I went to Temple University's art school called Tyler and majored in metals, jewelry, and computer-aided design. But I didn't really figure out that puppetry was a pathway for a career until late in my college. Mm-hmm. But then I basically like found the path and just drove on it and met people, and I was able to build things to work on productions, but then also puppeteer things, and had a lot of great mentors and access to professional puppeteers to be able to build into the industry. And it's something that I always loved to juggle. I don't think I would ever like to just do one versus the other.
I actually originally went to school for marine biology.
Oh, wow.
But then realized that's not what I wanted to do, and switched to Ithaca College because they have a great program where you can create your own major. Mm-hmm. So I was able to cobble together a puppetry degree. And then I went to New York as a performer, but I had knowledge of building. I had toyed with it, like Mike said. And puppetry is such a comprehensive art form. It incorporates all of those elements of building, sculpting, designing, performing, singing, dancing, directing, like whatever. Pretty much all elements of theater wind up getting used in puppetry, which is, like you said, what attracted us to it. It gives you that opportunity, so it's never boring.
Yeah. So when did you two start working together?
2000.
Yeah, we met the summer of 2000 at the O'Neill Puppetry Conference, right?
Yeah, I guess we actually didn't work together until
the next summer, the summer of 2001, I think, or something like that, or 2002.
Yeah, that's when we actually started working together, but we met in 2000. 2002, we were working closely with two other puppeteers, Scott Hitz and Russell Tucker. With us, eventually went on to form Monkey Boys Productions.
And founding your own company is a big enterprise. Like, what was the thought process behind like making that jump? When were you like, now it's time for us to found our own company?
I think we were building enough relationships in the industry that we realized that like we wanted to retain a little more ownership of our work and how much work we were doing, and hopefully create our own work.
Yeah, it seemed like an opportunity because we knew that you're only limited with how many auditions you can get or how many builds you can get. So it was a way to try and make our own work.
Yeah.
It was like they say it takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
We started the company in 2006, and it was about 2016 that we actually started gaining real traction. Like, we were having jobs here and there, but we were still working on the side. Mike was doing construction with his dad. I was bartending here and there. But in 2016, we really started expanding and getting a lot more regular work, and we've been very lucky.
That's amazing.
Over the past probably 8 years, we went from a company with just us to maybe a company with 3 employees, and now we flux between 20 and 40 employees.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Like, because you have a lot of people like listed on the website who are part of the Monkey Boys team, how did you go about expanding the company? And now how do you go about delegating like who works on what?
Yeah, so we've also been learning a lot over the past few years about that specifically, like delegating and process and production management and communicating, lots of communication tools and stuff like that, hiring the right administrators and the right project managers. So we've been lucky enough that it's kind of just been a slow enough tick that we've been able to handle it and not completely pull our hair out. Like, because, when you start a business, you're doing everything yourself. And then you finally realize there's a little too much of something that I can pass off to someone else. So we hired this awesome production manager, Betsy, who does really all of our organization when it comes to the stuff getting made. And then now we have a really great HR and financial administrator, Stacy, that helps us out with all that kind of stuff. We have project managers and team leaders like Bridget and Michelle and Terry and Zach, and just finding really great talent and local talent, which lots of people ask us, like, how do you find your talent? There's so much creative talent in the Philly area that we never have a problem finding creative talent. Like, luckily, more recently, we have a little more clout from a company standpoint that people are like asking us to work here. But even when we were really small, it seemed not that difficult to find people that could work for us. And the only difficulty is taking people's natural talents and the talents that they learned throughout their life and kind of like bending them towards the puppet world, because we use materials and techniques from all the art forms and all the different ways of making things.
I was really struck by what you were saying about, like, I guess, learning how to manage a company, because I think that's something that we've talked about a lot with the creative people that we've had on the show, where it's like once whatever you're working on gets big enough, it's not just a matter of you being able to delegate all your tasks to yourself, like having to learn to manage people, which is not necessarily something everyone likes to do or wants to do. I can see both of you shaking your heads.
Yeah, we're creatives that started a company. I more recently realized my dad started his own home remodeling company when I was super young. And you
didn't realize that earlier?
No, what I'm realizing is that like what that did to me without me knowing, like seeing my dad, work a full day, come home, have dinner, and then go out on estimates, just seeing that work ethic and what it takes to like run a business is something that I only more recently noticed that I had put into me at a young age, like something I didn't notice that was really a part of it. But it's just one of those things that you know what needs to get done, and you try and get it done without going too crazy as a business owner, like still making time for your family and everything. We spend a lot of time making sure that we're not going crazy.
Yeah.
We really try not to go crazy, because it's very easy to in the entertainment industry and to work 80-hour work weeks.
And that comes back to your question of, learning to delegate so that we do have the time, because we were handling all of the little elements and all of the different parts. And this way, like Mike said, we can, especially like working with SNL, we're often working 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Which is can be killer. So it's carving out the time, because we both have kids, to get time with them.
Yeah, it's really important, because I mean, again, another theme that comes up a lot, I think, on our show is like burnout. And especially in a creative field, it's very, very hard to avoid that, because you want to say yes to every project that comes your way. And then saying no is like a huge pain, because then it's like, what if they won't reach out to me again? Like, what if I'm losing that connection? How did you guys like learn how to achieve that kind of balance? Because it seems like you have a very healthy handle on it now, on how to make sure that you have a good work-life balance as well as all the people in your company.
I feel like from the very beginning, we would have some stressful meetings of like, oh no, what if we get this? What are we going to do? And for some reason, I was always calm enough to think like, we'll just hire more people. We'll take the time and we'll hire, and that adds that. I mean, that's its own stress in itself, just figuring out who to hire.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've done a pretty good job of hiring more people, because that's how the work's going to get done. Like, you can't just keep piling more work onto the same amount of people. You have to just keep growing and hiring more people. And luckily, people have been paying for that too. The pricing changes as business grows.
Yeah. And it's that Indiana Jones taking the step across the invisible bridge, And thankfully, Mike is very bold in that respect, because I get so worried about like, we can't just bring somebody new in. We don't have money for that, or we can't take this job on. We've never done one of those before. He's like, we can figure it out. We'll make it work.
I have a little bit of an if you build it, they will come mentality with that.
Yeah. And to answer your question too, part of what helped us learn was, enough 70 and 80-hour weeks of SNL where it was just like, this is going to kill us. This isn't going to be fun anymore. And we're going to like wind up turning it away. And we didn't want to lose that. We get so much joy out of working on that show and other projects that we wanted to make sure we didn't lose the joy. The whole reason we got into this industry, like, we got in this industry to be performers and builders.
Yeah.
But now so much of what we do is administrative. We didn't want to lose that joy.
Yeah. Lots of meetings about what do you want to do? Like trying to really decide what we want our job description to be, which is a great benefit. And it's one of the pluses of starting your own business. As it grows, you get to decide what do I really want to do?
Yeah, we're so lucky to have that choice.
It also seems that you guys have a really healthy working relationship with each other as heads of this company.
He's a jerk.
No.
I'm just here for the money.
But I think that's also something that's really valuable to have, like in a creative partnership, and also something that can be hard to develop or maintain for such a long period of time. Like you guys mentioned that the first project you worked on together was 2001. And I want to ask like what that was and how that went, and also how you guys have figured out how to work well together with each other, or if it was just like kind of instant where you both were like, I get this guy and he gets me.
It was, we worked on a small production up in Connecticut together for one summer. And that's when we first kind of started living together. And then we literally lived together in Brooklyn, down in Bay Ridge for 2.5 years. Before then, Mark and I went on tour together with Little Shop of Horrors. So like we kind of lived together for a good, I want to say 3 years before we even started the company together. So when you live with someone that long, you kind of learn what their quirks are and how to deal with stressful situations together. So I lean a lot onto that. I don't know about you, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, Michael's like my brother now, like we've been so close together. He introduced me to my wife. Like they went to high school together. We are family. Our families are, joined to extended levels. So that makes it so much easier because we can be honest with each other. We can be like, dude, this is not going well. What can we do to make this better? And we don't have to worry about like whatever emotional or psychological walls people might put up that you don't know,
Yeah, for sure.
We'll juggle hats. We'll be like, I need to talk to you like a business partner. I need to talk to you like a friend.
Yeah.
It's almost like just saying that helps.
Yeah. And so I have 2 final questions. First of which is, why the name Monkey Boys?
So when we were all living together, somebody was reading Vonnegut's Welcome to the Monkey House.
Yeah.
And they wrote that we had a dry erase board that we'd send each other messages on. And somebody wrote Welcome to the Monkey House. And one of us drew a monkey picture. And we started referring to the apartment as such. And then people started referring to us as the Monkey Boys.
Oh my gosh.
So several years later, when we actually formed the company, it was a natural, we already had kind of a moniker amongst the community.
Oh, that's wonderful. I feel like that's one of the hardest things to do, to decide on a company or LLC name where it's like, this is it for the rest of time. It's got to be good.
Right.
Exactly.
It also works because Mike has monkey arms.
I do. I have weirdly long arms. They call it an ape index. Have you ever looked up
I've
what
never
an
heard
ape
of
index
those.
is? Yeah, it's a real term that they use. I think they often use it in swimming and in rock climbing and boxing. It's called your ape index, and it's the ratio of your wingspan versus your height. So like I'm 6 foot tall, but my fingertip to fingertip measurement is like 6'4".
Wow.
It's 6'6", dude.
Is it? I don't know.
Yeah, we measured it.
I don't want to look too
like
weird.
You think of the Vitruvian Man, the classic guy in the circle. That's you should always be about the same, or identically, I guess.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
But it's great for Mike as a puppeteer because he doesn't have to duck his head. He can just stick his arm up in the air.
And my final question, as people who are very, very prominent in this industry, you've made such wonderful work. Do you have a favorite puppet that you didn't work on, and why is that one your favorite?
BB-8 is a more recent amazing puppet that like I haven't been able to work on like a bot yet, and that's one of the things I'd really like to do either on my own or like get started as like an internal project, is some sort of like RC / directly controlled robot puppet for like a film or something like that. That would really be cool for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 2 for me. Being a child of the 70s, I grew up loving the Muppets, and I would love to try and play with Fozzie sometime. And same with Snuffleupagus, who is coincidentally played by Martin Robinson, who we just spoke about with Little Shop. 2 different big Muppety puppets, but they just seem like a lot of fun, and they hold a special place in my heart. But who knows, maybe someday.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time to come on the show. It's such a delight to get to talk about your work.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, really great, Karen. Thank you.
This was a lot of fun.
It's time to reboot your credit card with Apple Card. Apple Card gives you unlimited cash back every day on every purchase. It's real cash you can spend right away. No need to wait and wait for rewards. Apply now in the Wallet app on iPhone to see your credit limit offer with no impact to your credit score. Subject to credit approval. Daily cash is available via an Apple Cash card or as a statement credit. See Apple Card customer agreement for terms and conditions. Apple Cash card is issued by Green Dot Bank, member FDIC. Accepting an Apple Card after your application is approved will result in a hard inquiry, which may impact your credit score. Karen, I loved that conversation. I confess that I am one of those people who has at times in the past used puppeteer in a derisive way as the kind of ultimate impractical job or vocation. But this interview totally turned me around, and I want to apologize to the world for my former attitude. So they both talked about being drawn to a complex, comprehensive art form that incorporates design and manufacturing and building, and then all of those performance aspects, you know, that there are so many different varieties that they work in. Mm-hmm. Are you a puppeteering aficionado? Like, how did you become aware of the Monkey Boys' work?
I would not describe myself as an aficionado. I would probably describe myself as an enthusiast in that I have next to no practical knowledge about puppetry, but I really love the art form and I love learning more about it and like watching behind the scenes videos and stuff like that. I became aware of Monkey Boy specifically because Sarah Sherman, a cast member on Saturday Night Live, whom I love, by the way, gave a shout out to them during a late night interview while talking about the meatball sketch that I mentioned in the interview with Michael and Mark. Obviously, I'd seen their work before. I was just kind of shocked to discover how much of their work I'd seen without realizing it. But that was the first time that I was like, oh, I didn't know their names before, but now I know that I need to be paying attention to them because their work is so incredible.
Yeah, and they're great talkers. I mean, they obviously have a fantastic partnership, and that really shone through. And it's just good to hear that working together very closely and incredibly intensely isn't going to mess up what's obviously a really profound and important friendship. And I was struck by their habit of saying, I need to talk to you as a business partner, or I need to talk to you as a friend. You know, that's a really great way to seek clarity and protect the relationship. So I know that your writing partner is also your partner in life. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering, have you designed any strategies for making sure that pressures on your creative relationship don't mess with the personal relationship?
I think we're still working on it. We've gotten a lot better at drawing that line in the sand, metaphorically speaking, so that if we become frustrated about a work thing, it doesn't carry over to our personal lives, if that makes sense. Yeah. We don't say it so directly. Like, we don't say, I need to talk to you as a business partner. But I think it helps that we tend to set aside specific chunks of the day to do creative work together. So we kind of know when that block of time is over, we're back to our normal, quote unquote, lives rather than business life. But it's really hard, but also really rewarding when you can actually make it work.
Wow, that's so smart. I would say that when I was younger, I did do some creative work with a woman who was my first serious girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And it was really great because we did have a great relationship and we had, you know, we did vibe together very well. But it was also sometimes tense. And I think it would have been easier if we'd had those time blocks, you know, because we were trying to do, you know, as it happens, there were radio projects outside of work, which meant that on top of all the other strains, we were exhausted when we were trying to collaborate, which was hard. So very smart, Karen Hahn, very smart. I loved your questions about timing, like how they get clients to realize and plan for how much time it takes to make a convincing smart puppet or prop, which It's complicated by the fact that for the last 6 years or so, they've been making convincing smart puppets and props in like 48 hours for Saturday Night Live. And I suspect that every profession has some equivalent of that problem, which in our world you could summarize as, you say you need a week or more to write something good, but when news breaks, you seem to be able to produce something great within hours. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I feel like I have. Do you have any advice for balancing time pressure with a desire to do your best work?
I think it's a skill that you develop as you go, which I think Mark and Mike sort of allude to. They've been in this industry so long that they know exactly what they can do in what time frame and how much they can push themselves outside of that, which is not something that you'll have as good a handle on when you're just starting out in any given field. I think it's also important to be as flexible as you can when you get a request like that. Like, it's nice if you can say to the person who's asking, you want A product in this time, I can deliver B product, which will still work and fulfill the need, but maybe not be exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.
And I think what Mark and Mike said about not wanting to deliver a subpar product is important too. If you really know that it's not going to work, it's better to acknowledge that and pass than destroy yourself trying to make something that ends up being not as good as anyone wants it to be.
Yeah.
I guess the bottom line is know what you can do in that time frame and start from there. And I sort of thought about this, like in what you were saying with regards to media specifically. I think this happens a lot when like someone dies in an obituary.
Exactly. That's exactly what I had in mind. Yeah.
Where it's like, if you know enough about that person, it will be relatively easier to bang out that obituary in like a couple of hours. But if you don't know anything about that person, you need to pass. Like, it will be really, really hard for you to do it well.
So wise. I was really impressed by the way they handled the first sketch that they worked on for SNL getting cut. And at the very last minute, oh my God. I'm sure the fact that 8 or so years have passed since then is a factor, especially since they've become go-to collaborators for the show.
Yeah.
But as you said, Karen, it happens. Stories get cut for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with your work. Projects get cancelled. Pivots happen. Do you have any advice for how to avoid spiraling when something you've worked on and that you kind of had hopes for, doesn't happen for reasons that are just beyond your control?
The biggest thing to remember is something that I think you've just mentioned, which is that 99.99% of the time, the fact that your thing has been cut or that there has been a pivot is not really about you at all. Yeah. It's usually about larger corporate needs or money, and you have to at least tell yourself to not take it personally, even if you still feel sad about it. You have to sort of have the rational knowledge in your head. That said, if it is pretty clear that it is a you problem for that 0.01% of the time, then I think that's sort of a good thing too, in that you can take a step back and try to assess what you can do better or change rather than thinking that it's your fault that the company you work for is undergoing budget cuts.
Yeah.
I think it's also worth it to try to get excited about whatever you're working on next or just to move on to something else. I don't think you'll be able to totally forget the canned project, but it'll help you feel more hopeful about the future, hopefully. And also, in the 99.99% of those cases, the fact that you did some work will give people an idea of what you're capable of, and you have a slightly established relationship. So hopefully you can just think about how to grow that relationship moving forward rather than thinking of it as a total end.
Yeah. Marc and Michael clearly really enjoy their work. In all its different aspects, both the problem-solving side of it and then the performance, the art of puppeteering. And I was so glad to hear them say that they didn't want to lose the joy that it brings them. And I know that at some points in my career, I've tried to sort of ignore or maybe just kind of squelch the joy, or at least kind of tamp it down a little bit so that I could just get stuff done and focus on getting a good review or, getting a raise or something very sort of process-oriented, focusing on the work because it needs to be done rather than because I enjoyed it. And there's even a kind of school of thought that if you are committed to creativity and making it be part of your life, you should do it as a side project so that the need to pay the bills doesn't kill the joy. So, Karen, We've got 30 seconds. No. What do you make of that debate?
That's such a tough question. I definitely don't think it needs to be a side project, because then the implication is like you're not getting any joy out of your day job, which is such a huge chunk of your life. It's like, don't do that to yourself, or at least try to find some joy in that too. But I think that if and when that kind of creative work that we're talking about becomes your primary work, you have to make sure that you're not totally losing the joy, because there are definitely moments when it becomes not fun, but at the end of the day, you should still love it. And I think we've sort of talked about this on the show before, where everything will be hard sometimes. Everything has ups and downs. But you shouldn't be ending every day feeling awful or resentful towards your line of work. And if you are, then it's probably time to take a step back, if you can, and reassess what actually makes you happy.
Yeah, indeed.
That's very existential.
No, but oh my God. I mean, it just rings so true. Like, everything gets hard at times.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be hard all the time. My last question for you today, I must ask, do you have a favorite puppet or puppeting experience?
This is such a fun question, and I do have an answer for this, which is that I am obsessed with whenever you can see Kermit the Frog's legs, like especially when he's riding a bike around. It just feels so special. It helps you kind of suspend your disbelief a little more. Like there's not a hand inside the puppet making him move around. He's moving his little legs and he's cycling, which seems unbelievable for a puppet. Yeah. And of course, I have to turn the question around to you, which is, do you have a favorite puppet?
I would say that to the extent that I do have a favorite puppet, it's got to be like from my childhood. So the big puppets when I was a kid were Sooty and Sweep, which were very basic hand puppets worked by a gruff Yorkshireman. They also had a female friend, Sue. And I just kind of have a slight fear that they might have been kind of awful, but I just don't remember enough to. But I would say there's a decent chance of that. And then another sort of slightly embarrassing thing, it's like saying that your favorite comedy performer is Benny Hill, but Rod Hull's Emu, which it was just kind of physical comedy, and part of that craziness of puppets were like, it's not real, and yet when, like you kind of embrace the uncanny valley and like, absolutely. I know it's not real, but that's looking pretty convincing. And then, of course,
it's like, I want Kermit to be real.
Yeah, absolutely. Why shouldn't he be? He's the sweetest guy. Oh, my God. Sometimes when I just want to, have a moment, I'll just watch him sing The Rainbow Connection. It just makes me feel good.
Yeah.
What a cool guy.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have this week. Unless, of course, you're a Slate Plus subscriber, in which case you will soon hear a little something extra from this week's interview. And that's not the only benefit of Slate Plus membership, of course. You will get extra segments on our show and on shows like Culture Gabfest and The Waves, entire bonus episodes of shows like 1 Year and Big Mood, Little Mood, and you'll never hit a paywall on the Slate site. To learn more, go to slate.com/workingplus.
Thank you to our guests, Marc Petrosino and Michael Latini, and thank you to consummate puppet master Kevin Bendis, who produced this week's show. We'll be back next week with Isaac Butler's interview with cookbook author Ali Slagle. Until then, get back to work.